And I had someone tweet me who was watching in France. So thank you to you saying, Christian, by the way, Bruno has just gone mad live on the telly on French TV saying there will be big consequences for Esteban. We're going to have to make a harsh decision.
Not that I'm stirring the pot. I'm just saying that when a thing like this happens, it can't just be it. The same with an argument in a relationship. It's never about the thing, is it? It's about all the other things.
Can I stir the pot? Can I stir the pot?
Please.
Those two have never got on throughout their career.
Oh.
They're getting on better than has been reported in the past, certainly. Yes, fair enough, Alpine. And actually, even though it's unprecedented, if I'm Bruno Fairman, I think that's a bad idea.
Hello and welcome to The Fast and the Curious with me, Team Principal Greg James, and our F1, I was about to say gnome then. Don't know why.
18 months we've been doing this podcast. I've not had gnome before, but height-wise, it's accurate. I'm not at all, man.
But also gnomes are quite jolly, aren't they, usually?
Yeah.
And also have, they demand respect and...
Do they?
Well, I think they're sort of, they're protectors as well of the shed, usually, aren't they?
Yeah, that's certainly fair. I would suggest that's fair.
I have realised that I said gnome, and I have no real reason to back it up. This is a very tired person who's trying to do his best. But we have an amazing episode of The Fast and the Curious for you, just hours after, well, a day after.
Well, quite a few hours, but no, you are right, hours.
But still hours.
Yeah.
After the Monaco Grand Prix, which is, I'm saying it, it's the most famous Grand Prix in the whole world.
Yes, it is. That's fair, isn't it? That's very fair. Yeah.
So no Betty, she is off having a life, and that is completely fine.
Well, we should say it's her boyfriend Alex's birthday. Happy birthday, Alex. That's what she's doing.
Happy birthday, Alex. So yes, it's just you and me. I missed the race live because I was at Radio 1's big weekend in Luton. I was on duty doing all Radio 1 things there. And do you know what? I didn't find out who won.
Oh, well done.
And I watched it on catch up, and I had no idea what was about to happen. And it was amazing. But what I will say is there were so many people at the big weekend talking about Formula One and saying, "What are you going to do today? What are you going to do today? Are you going to go and watch it? What are you going to do?" And there were people in McLaren hats and Mercedes hats, sort of were there being dragged along, or they were, all just enjoying it. And they were like, "I sort of want to go and find a TV to go and watch the Grand Prix." So I said, "No talking. Don't tell me anything." I didn't even know who was on pole. I was
really impressive work, Greg. That's really good.
I was in a Luton bubble. So here we go then with a review of the race, all the big talking points, and all of it from Christian Hugill's perspective, our Formula One knowledgeable gnome. Oh, there we go. Got it. Knowledgeable gnome. Needed a bit of alliteration, and we're off.
No, I'm happy with it.
Where do you want to start then? Do you want to give us the headlines as if you were doing a news bulletin?
Leclerc wins the Monaco Grand Prix.
Newsbeat.
I've not done that for a long time, Greg. That was warmly nostalgic and a Radio 1 in-joke for everyone there.
Okay, so that's big news. And you sent me a beautiful bit of commentary, which I'd love to start with, because that actually... That opens up the whole story, doesn't it, of why it was such a lovely win for Charles.
Well, let's give a shout out to Alex Jakes, who's the commentator for F1 TV and Channel 4's coverage. And he's a lovely man, a really nice man, also a phenomenal commentator. And he had clearly prepared for the possibility of Leclerc winning the Grand Prix and spoke about Charles losing his dad at a young age and Charles telling his dad a little white lie as his dad was, in his final days, that he had made it to F1. Charles sort of having the faith in his skills that it wouldn't be a lie for long, and so it proved to be. And also the fact that, and I was listening to another podcast, I think it was The Race, who do a lovely podcast, and I think they made a fantastic point. If I could well be crediting someone else here, but I think it was The Race. who said that there's not many Monegascans. There's not many people from Monaco, I believe. I think this was Mark Hughes, who's a proper F1 legend of a journalist. I think Mark said about 8,000 or 9,000 Monegascans.
Yeah.
So, of course, the chance of one of them becoming a Formula One driver is so slim, let alone one winning the Monaco Grand Prix. It's just a lovely story.
It's a lovely story. You don't hear the word Monegasque.
Betty texted me this over the weekend. She said, Monegasque's a lovely word, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I think we should also just point out, just for balance, that obviously it's a lovely story and taking nothing away. But yes, the chances are slim, but they're definitely higher because of the net wealth of the people that live in Monaco, I'd say.
And also, I've been asked a lot this weekend why Formula One drivers live in Monaco. And Leclerc doesn't come from a Formula One family. But Greg, of course, you're right. I can't remember what his dad did for a living, but I actually think it was a working class job. But you don't have to pay income tax as a Monegascan resident. If you are an official signed up resident of Monaco and you can say, this is my home address, I live here. Of course, they'll have secondary locations all around the world. They'll have a holiday home in the UK, what have you. But you don't have to pay tax on what you earn. So, of course, it's a financially worthwhile thing to do to go and live in Monaco. But yes, of course you're right, Greg. Of course you are. But it's a lovely story for Charles. And also another thing Alex mentioned in his commentary, Greg, that you so nicely brought up was Jules Bianchi, who we've mentioned on the podcast before.
Yeah.
He was the last F1 driver to be killed. Charles is the godson. I always get them the wrong way around, godson and godfather. Charles is the godson of Charles. Charles is the godson of Jules. The two were very, very close. And again, a lovely little nod there as well. So it was. There's nobody in one of those nice wins where, very much like Lando winning in Miami, everybody in the paddock is pleased. And I even saw our friend Sophie Ogg of McLaren's boss of comms, who's been on this pod, saying, if we're going to lose to anyone, losing to Charles in Monaco is lovely. And I thought that summed it up very, very nicely.
Yeah, there was, I think it was Martin Brundle on the coverage who said this will be as popular here as Lando's win was in Miami, in terms of everyone rooting for a great man and a great team and a great bit of history and a great story. Yeah. So that's really, really nice. So the race itself then, I watched it and enjoyed it. I mean, I didn't enjoy the big crash. I mean, I sort of enjoyed the big crash when I realised that no one was hurt.
A bit of drama. Everybody does love a bit of drama once you realise everyone's all right.
When it looked like poor old Checo was just left sitting in a shopping trolley at the end of that. It's so small, that cockpit, isn't it? Really, when everything else is broken away, you realise just how fragile these cars are, I guess.
Well, yeah, because up at the front, from the minute the race weekend started, I genuinely, and you know me, I'm not one to big up my own prediction skills. I thought Charles winning this from the minute he turned up at practice. He looked fantastic, and he looked on it. And we've all said he does make too many mistakes, but when he's on it, he's the best in the world. He's among the best in the world. So the big story of the race, really, because Charles just never looked like losing it, was that big crash. And actually, it's a testament to modern safety standards that me and Betty said in the preview, in tracks like Miami, you can say the walls are close, but in Monaco, the walls are there. So when you have a high-speed crash, something horrific like that happens. And they are almost designed to crumble and leave the driver in a pod. And you just said there, it's like a shopping trolley. It's a really good way of putting it. The way that the Checo is in this sort of shopping trolley-esque pod around, it showed you. And the fact that everybody so quickly walked away shows you the modern safety standards of F1. I think Kevin Magnussen was optimistic in putting his nose up the inside there. I don't think it's quite as horrific a move as people are making it out to be. It's lap one. I think Kevin's reputation's gone before him a little bit. I do think it's one of those, to use a football analogy, I've seen them given. I've seen people given penalty points for that. It wouldn't have surprised me if he got penalty points. It was Kevin's fault, but it wasn't necessarily as that is horrific as people have said online. I don't think.
I watched all the replays a few times because you want to get a proper sense of what's just happened and the sequence of events leading up to, because it's always really interesting, isn't it? That's as we do this podcast and as I really zoom in on this sport.
Yes,
I really love the sequence of the corners and the positions before each corner and in and out of each.
So it's like the flow almost. Yeah,
the flow. I love that. And I go, how did he get there? Why did he go there? Why didn't he go on the inside and there? But I just watched that over and over again and thought, this is so bloody hard. This is so difficult. It's millimeters away from another car going 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And of course there's going to be shunts and bumps and all the rest of it. At Monaco, it's so narrow.
And we're lucky enough to have seen them up close where you realise how big they are. And a few people said, oh, well, you can tell it's Checo's fault because he looked right and he saw Kev was there. Yeah, but he might have thought there was enough room.
You're looking at a slow motion replay of a thing that happened in a 100th of a second where the man, he looked to the right and then your brain's not going to go, oh, but hang on a second, I'm just going to... It's all instinctive in that moment and you just have to follow your instincts, don't you, I guess? So it happens.
Yeah. It happens. It's one of those where if Kevin had been given a penalty for that, I wouldn't have complained too much. If it was classed as a racing incident, which it was, I wouldn't have complained too much. That decision had a lot more on it because, of course, if Kevin got more penalty points, he's facing a race ban. I actually think some of those points have been a bit harsh. Kevin's not at the best of years, racecraft-wise, as we call it. All of those skills that you've just been describing, Greg, are called racecraft. But an unfortunate incident. And, of course, the completely innocent party was Nico Hülkenberg, who just happened to be taken out alongside. So a bad old weekend for Haas.
So for someone who didn't watch the whole weekend intently, and I guess there'll be a lot of listeners who would just want to hear the story of the weekend, why was it not a great weekend for Max Verstappen? How did he end up where he ended up? And why is that not a bigger story? Or maybe it is a bigger story and I've just missed it.
What makes that Red Bull car so hard to beat is it can run very low to the floor. Aerodynamically, that's a big advantage. When it runs very low to the floor, it's able, better than most other Formula One cars, to ride the bumps of the track, ride the curbs better than its rivals. But what we're seeing at the moment is at certain tracks, it's not able to ride the bumps as well. And that's exaggerated at the likes of Singapore that we saw last year, Melbourne, where they had trouble this year, Imola, where they only just won, Miami, where they didn't win. These are all tracks where the curbs are high, where there's bumpy elements. And in those situations, what you're seeing, again, Monaco is another example, you're seeing Max say the car's almost turning quite slippery.
Wow.
Now, that is all exaggerated because McLaren and Ferrari are closer in terms of sheer pace.
Wow.
So that's, to answer your question, why this one wasn't as good for Red Bull and for Max. Max could only manage sixth. If he hadn't had shaved the wall, he might have managed, in the qualifying, he might have managed fourth or third. He was never going to win this race. Checo had a huge struggle, didn't even get out of Q1, such as how difficult the car was to control. That Red Bull is still overall the fastest car and will still win the majority of the races this season, but we're seeing a much more normal season. We've already seen 3 non-race wins. That's a much more normal level of domination. We've already seen Carlos, Charles and Lando win races, and there will be more non-Red Bull race wins this season.
And how exciting.
Is
that now 3 weekends in a row where Red Bull are off the pace?
Yeah, because they only just won in Imola.
Yeah.
Only just. So yes, that is 3 weekends in a row. Red Bull have only won 1 of those, and on all 3 of those, it's been really tricky for Red Bull. There will be tracks this season where it just suits the Red Bull perfectly and no one can touch them. We shouldn't get too carried away.
As we've said, it's too late. I'm carried away.
You're carried away. You've gone. I appreciate you've gone.
I'm way gone. And someone else, and Charles Leclerc winning, just makes me carry on even more, carrying away. And seeing bloody Oscar on the podium makes me get even more carried away.
I want to come to Oscar in a minute. One more brief point on you getting carried away. Let me say something that I think will help you get carried away.
Please.
I'm still not convinced we've got a drivers' battle in terms of the drivers' championship. I remain to be convinced there. But I will allow you to get fully carried away on the Constructors' Championship. I think there's a real scrap on there. Ferrari are currently on 252 points. Red Bull are on 276. That's what, 56, 20-odd points difference. I think, especially with Checo, last 2 races has struggled, whereas Carlos and Charles have been very consistent. I think Ferrari and McLaren, not all that far behind, are knocking on the door. I think Red Bull have got to be very careful about this Constructors' Championship. I think we've got a right battle on our hands there. It's that close.
Wow.
Wouldn't have said that at the start of the season, would we?
No, but that's brilliant. That keeps people hooked in because there's a real, a title battle is the best thing. Devastating for Arsenal fans like me.
Yes.
But it was an interesting season. So,
hey, it's you making the football reference, not Betty this week. And I'd expect a cricket reference of you, but that was...
I bloody love footy. I want to talk about Oscar, but just a very quick word on the subplot, which is Carlos Sainz still doing very well after being delivered the news that he's being binned. We talk about this quite often. He's still going quite strong here.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz still going well, but he is behind Charles, like a good podium.
Yeah.
But Charles, in the last handful of Grand Prix, has, unlike at the very start of the season, pulled the balance back. So I'm now in the position of, and this could change throughout the season, of, yeah, if you're going to drop one of them, you're right to drop Carlos, because I think Charles, all in all, is probably just ahead, as he's proved this weekend.
Right.
This is one of those Charles Leclerc weekends where he just looks every bit the finished article. We now need to see that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But then the question becomes, well, are you right to drop Carlos for Lewis? Because we've seen Lewis get out-qualified and therefore at Monaco outraced by George. So that's where it becomes interesting.
Mm.
And by the way, in the last episode of the podcast, me and Betty were talking about Valtteri Bottas being linked to Williams. Now Carlos Sainz is being linked to Williams.
Ooh.
So again, where Carlos ends up, Sergio Perez remains favourite to keep the Red Bull seat. Sauber remains a possibility for Carlos, but also Williams in the mix, and we'll come on to them a bit later as well. But yeah, should we talk about Oscar?
Yeah, let's move on to our favourite, just because he was our first. And we followed him from day one in Formula One. He was our very first thing we ever recorded for this podcast.
Yes.
Oscar Piastri had a sensational weekend. Take us through it, please.
I think Monaco suited Oscar for a number of reasons. One, because he's extraordinarily talented, and you need to be extraordinarily talented to get the best out of your car over one lap. Oscar can do that. His one lap pace is right up there. And he did it around Monaco in season 2 of his career. So can't heap enough praise on him. Where I think he does lack on Lando Norris is managing the tyres, as to many people's frustration is a big part of modern day F1. For example, in a stint of a race, saying, I need to get the most out of my tyres I can in this to stay in the Grand Prix, but not take too much out of my tyres in order to wear them out and make it harder later on in the race. Now, that will come with experience, I've no doubt, but that's where Lando's experience shines through. But in Monaco, 2 things in Oscar's favour. If you stick it ahead of your teammate in qualifying, chances are you're going to stay there because it's so difficult to overtake. That happened. And the second thing is, they were doing the race at such a slow pace, for reasons we'll come on to in a bit, that he didn't need to manage his tyres. It was being done for him. So Oscar did all his hard work in a sensational qualifying. We were saying in the preview with Betty, qualifying is more important than the race in many ways in Monaco. And he showed his class. So one of those weekends that remind you that we don't just say Oscar is special on this podcast because he comes on a lot, because he was our first recording, because he's our mate, because he is bloody special. And I'm getting to the stage of thinking there's a strong chance he'll win a race this season.
Oh, my God.
You'd be daft to bet against that. McLaren are right up there. Another thing with Red Bull is as well, they're struggling to develop the car. They seem to, and we've had this with Mercedes, where I've explained before that the simulator doesn't match what they're seeing on track. It's a problem Mercedes have had historically in the last couple of years. It's a problem Red Bull are now having. They seem to have hit the ceiling of development, whereas Ferrari and McLaren are chasing upgrades, and that's still working. And for that reason, why shouldn't Oscar Piastri win a Grand Prix?
But this is it. I mean, this is why you need leading lights in any sport, because everyone else then has to up their game. And then it's up to the people that were leading to go, oh Christ, all right, hang on, let's see how much better we can get. I think this is absolutely what top level sport's all about, isn't it? You've got the best person, and then they go, all right, well, I've got to be at least that good to win.
Yeah.
And so on and so on. So it's healthy, I'd say. That's what this is, isn't it? It's healthy that we've got different people winning and putting pressure on those Red Bulls.
It is no longer a guarantee when you come into a race weekend that Max Verstappen will win. And the proof of that is in the last 3, he's won one of them just. And that's a lovely position for the sport to be in.
Can I please congratulate you on making sure Alex Albon got his first points of the season, please?
You know, he comes back on the podcast for his first pre-race appearance of the season. What happens? What happens?
He's in the points.
And actually, credit to Williams, they've been chipping away nicely. They had a bad
Yeah, I
start.
mean, mainly credit to Williams. Not. I
I
wasn't
would
actually saying you
suggest it's
were.
probably 50-50 with Fast and the Curious and Williams. Probably 50-50. Maybe 60-40 in favour of us, if anything.
Yeah, thanks to Christian Hugill, thanks to Betty Glover, thanks to Jimmy Blake, and also, well done to James Vowles for his part.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. We should give them credit where it's due. Williams have been chipping away and making slowly but surely. It looked like go to round one, round two. It looked like they were a million miles away from points. They've gradually been getting closer and closer and closer. There were some upgrades on Alex's car only this weekend and not Logan's. Those upgrades will come across both cars. They are, and also shaving weight off the car is a big problem for Williams. I would be very surprised if that's the last points of Williams' season. I think they're making good progress to get back to where they were last year of being in with a shout with points. Again, heap praising on Alex as a driver. To do that in Monaco is special. So and Monaco is where the driver's skill is shown off.
Yeah.
He's bloody good, Alex Albon. And again, we're not just saying that because he comes on, but it is mostly down to us because he came on. And we'd like to point that out to Team Williams that if he wants to come on before Canada, we're happy to keep this tradition up.
So how much has it got to do with F1 Pets, which was really the only bit of F1 content I saw over the weekend because it was in the Fast and the Curious group. So for those who weren't listening to the last episode, can you explain F1 Pets, please?
There's not much more to explain other than the fact that we mentioned that Betty's dog McGinn is called McGinn because Betty's boyfriend, happy birthday, Alex, is obsessed with the footballer John McGinn, and therefore the dog has a slightly curious name. Me and Jimmy once, where we were out chatting, came across a dog called Lando, and it was like, lol, and the dog was called Lando because F1. And therefore, we've had loads of messages. So can we give Michael Schumacher a shout out on the podcast?
Well, I do, but also you've just reminded me of a thing that I don't say very often because I don't want Bella to know that this was the real reason. But Barney, in my head, is named after Barney Gumble from The Simpsons.
Great. That fits a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Both a bit.
My dog is like a cartoon drunk.
Yes, he really is. But if you follow Bella on socials, don't tell Bella that. Let's just keep that because Bella doesn't listen to this podcast, so it's a safe space.
It was also because when we picked him up from Batsy Dog's home, and by the way, how do you know when someone's got a rescue dog? They'll tell you immediately.
Instantly.
He was called Marley. And I thought that is absolutely the worst name. That's the dog that dies in Marley and Me. What's he doing?
No, the dog that in that horrible, mortifying film. Absolutely not.
So they said, if you want to change his name, maybe change it to something that sounds a bit like Marley. And I went, I've got just the idea. So there you go, Barney Gumble. So yeah, Michael Schumacher.
So there was a very cute cat, and I'm not necessarily a cat person, but there's a very cute cat in our DMs, a sort of white cream kitten. Please meet Michael Schumacher. I'm a Ferrari fan. His dad is a Merc fan. We met in the middle on the driver that drove for both teams. We've then got a black cat, and the message reads, I'm currently listening to your latest podcast and thought you'd enjoy hearing this story. Greg, what did you just say? My family volunteers with Cats Protection. And last year, on the weekend of Silverstone, we received a call about a litter of kittens found at the Alpine garage in Enston. We took the opportunity to name them after F1 drivers, and in the end, we named 28 kittens after various drivers.
Fantastic. That is so good. I'll tell you what, Enstone's a really good name for a cat, actually.
Enstone's a great name for a cat.
Isn't it? It's quite a good name. We also have a black Labrador.
Who's gorgeous. I love a black lab, and he's gorgeous.
So, Sebastian Vettel retired. So we called him Sebastian because we got our dog on the same day that Vettel retired. So he's actually just called Seb. He loves everyone, says this message. And he is a speedy boy like Vettel. Yeah, that's the thing. Great to call a dog after a F1 driver because they always get the zoomies, which if you don't know what that is, it's essentially when it looks like they're malfunctioning and they just dart around the living room.
Belt around, yeah.
So yeah, I got to see Seb driving Senna's McLaren during my stag last week at Imola, and I genuinely had a lump in my throat from that person. So thanks so much to you for sending that one in. What else we got?
Have you seen the picture of Max Verstappen playing with Jenson Button?
Yes, I have. Yes.
So there's a gorgeous black and white cat with a sort of grey cat on top, and the grey one lying on top is Max. And the white and brown one is Button after Jensen. So Max and Button, the F1 kittens. Button's a perfect name for a kitten, isn't it? Perfect.
We're going to put all these up on the Fast and Curious Instagram. We'll just put these up before the episode goes up, so you'll see them now if you have a look while you're listening. And last but not least, we have George Russell, who is a West Highland Terrier with a stolen sock in the garden. That is Lauren and Martin in Basingstoke. They're dog sitting while his mum and dad are on holiday in America. His dad is also a big F1 fan. It's really good. So, okay, I organise you a new dog. Okay, what are you calling it?
Potentially Damon, which is a great name for a dog. And also my first F1 memory, I always say, is Damon Hill winning the 98 Belgian Grand Prix. So I do like Damon.
I got to say, Button's quite a good name.
Well, I've always thought Jensen as well, because I'll be honest,
No,
Greg.
what do you mean Jensen? What, Jensen the dog?
Yeah, I like Jensen for a dog. But I also like the idea of giving the dog a ridiculously niche F1 name, like getting a gorgeous golden retriever and calling it Heinz Alfredson.
I really love a full name. So like calling your new dog Gunter Steiner.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite good, isn't it?
Well, Heinz Alfredson being triple barreled. It's Heinz Alfredson sit. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so maybe I've always wanted to call a dog James Bond.
Or James Hunt.
Or James Hunt. Yeah, I think that's quite good.
Bella's not letting you call the dog either of those two things.
But you could, if it is, if you name it after a famous sports person, then if you are calling your dog in the park to get it back to you, then it will sound like you're doing commentary and they've just won.
And Damon crosses the line to
Senna! Senna! It's Senna! Isn't it? So it's like that, isn't it?
Oh my God, you've just, in that voice, Murray from Murray Walker.
Murray's
now
good.
There's a name for a dog, Murray.
In the words of Alan Partridge, this has been excellent banter.
Excellent banter.
Right then, come on then. Tell me about this next bit. Tell me about George Russell's, what is it, notice board?
Yeah, so on the last podcast, which you probably won't have listened to because she's barely been home since it aired, me and Betty...
I've not even spoken to my mum, let alone listen to the fucking podcast.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. That's fair enough. But me and Betty wanted a way to be able to run through quick bits of Formula One news. So we sort of saw it in our heads as a bit of a notice board. So we said, well, who's the sort of most likely to run a sort of village notice board that you walk past when you walk the dog? George Russell, isn't it? It just is. It just is George Russell. So I thought we'd do a bit of George Russell's community notice board for any other business bits of the Monaco Grand Prix. So the first point I'd like to put on George Russell's community notice board, have you seen, and this is news, that there's a French civil war happening. We'll pin this on the notice board at Alpine, where it's all slightly kicked off.
Yes. So the Ocon thing, talk us through this. So during the race, the boss kicked off, didn't he?
The boss kicked off. So Pierre qualifies 10th. And naturally, it puts himself in a great position to score what's a very rare point in Monaco. Of course, nobody's expecting big overtaking manoeuvres. What happens on lap 1, just before the tunnel? Esteban tries an unbelievably opportunistic overtaking manoeuvre and punts Pierre into the air. And it ruined Esteban's race. It's unbelievably lucky it didn't ruin Pierre's. Pierre had a great weekend and went on to score a point. But you know how we see on the UK Sky coverage, you get Crofty say, joining us on the pit wall. Will Canal Plus, the French border, have the Alpine boss, Bruno Ferman, on the pit wall? And I had someone tweet me who was watching in France. So thank you to you saying, Christian, by the way, Bruno has just gone mad live on the telly on French TV saying, there will be big consequences for Esteban. We're going to have to make a harsh decision. And apparently, according to journalists in the know, they are considering, might have even happened by the time this podcast has aired, they're considering dropping him for a race. And Alpine have 2 very good reserve drivers in Mick Schumacher and Jack Doohan, both of which have been on this podcast, who could come in and fill in like we saw Ollie Behrman do. And that would be almost unprecedented. I can't think of, and I even put this on socials, I can't think of a time it would have happened in the past. It would have happened in the 70-year history, but in modern day F1, I can't think of a time where that's happened.
That's extraordinary. And immediately I thought, it can't just be that.
You are spot on.
These things don't happen in isolation. Things don't operate in a vacuum. There must be other things going on. There must be other bits of disquiet. Not that I'm stirring the pot. I'm just saying that when a thing like this happens, it can't just be it. The same with an argument in a relationship. It's never about the thing, is it? It's about all the other things.
Can I stir the pot?
Please.
Those 2 have never got on. throughout their career.
Oh.
They're getting on better than has been reported in the past, certainly. Yes, fair enough, Alpine. And actually, even though it's unprecedented, if I'm Bruno Fairman, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad way to say to your drivers who don't like each other, we need every single point we can get this season. And you need to put this rivalry behind you.
Yeah.
Where it would backfire spectacularly is if they put Mick or Jack in and one of them bins it into the tyre wall in Canada or sticks it in the wall of champions, the final corner, then Bruno looks a bit daft. But Jack's a good shout for a future F1 drive. Mick's driven 2 seasons in F1. I don't think it's the worst situation. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. And by the way, normally I'm quite conservative. I'm normally with a small c. I normally think that actually, let's calm down a little bit here. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world, you know.
Fantastic summaries of all the big talking points. Christian, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time this evening on a Bank Holiday Monday. And we look forward to another race, not next weekend, the weekend after.
Which I'll be at.
He's off to Canada.
I'm off to Canada, so I shall report back from the camp. I've never been to Canada, never been to the country, never been to the Grand Prix. One of the ones I've been always wanting to go to, so I'll report back. But we've got another episode before that anyway, so we'll talk more about that then.
Fantastic. Before we go, just want to quickly remind everybody about, well, part of your preparations for Canada might include making sure NordVPN's on your phone and your laptop and all your devices. NordVPN is very, very useful if you want to watch all your favorite things from the UK, but when you're traveling abroad, it changes your location and all the rest of it. So are you sorted for Canada? When do you leave? You got a bit of time?
I've got a bit of time, but the trick I always forget is, and I've got the hang of it now because you and Betty used it and I hadn't before. So I'm used to sort of downloading things when I'm away. The trick I always forget is when I was booking the trip, and this is the case for anyone listening planning a future Grand Prix. If you sign up to NordVPN now, you can switch a virtual location to help you save money because the price of some flights and accommodation will change based on where you're booking it from. That's the trick I keep forgetting. So next time I'm booking a flight, I must remember to do that, to change my location to the flight.
Good stuff. You're learning. You're learning about Nording.
I'm learning about Norbing, yeah. And of course,
not Norbing, Nording.
Oh, no, I said Norbing, didn't I? It could have gone very wrong.
Norbing it sounds like a slightly different thing. Anyway, don't forget, no matter where you are, Nord's cybersecurity system helps protect your online identity, your passwords, and your bank details. I actually do use this, so I can speak from experience.
Now, we all do. The three of us all do.
Yeah, well, no, you do. You're late adopters. I was an early adopter.
I think so was Betty, though.
Well, she's not here. She's not here, so I'm just going to claim it.
Fine, all right, you claim it. Well, I tell you, speaking of claiming, to claim the best discount. Hey, it's not just thrown together in this podcast. To claim the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/TFATC, and our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. It's very generous, I think. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the description of this week's episode.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christian, for your information and your gnoming and your norbing. And we'll be back with you. We'll be back with you later this week. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, watch it on YouTube, and just follow us on social media for God's sake. Bye.
I think I'll norb off. Bye-bye.